And then you think that all the institutions that run the world and dictate human perception, education, academia, politics, journalism, on and on it goes. Medicine, science, apart from the cutting edge of it, they're all making decisions and they're all communicating how things are, postage stamp consensus, from the perspective of a reality that does not exist. This is why mainstream scientists like Professor Richard Dawkins, the kind of anti-alternative anything professor at Oxford University, that's why he waves away any alternative explanation of reality. That's impossible. Yes, Richard, mate, it's impossible if the world is solid. It ain't. It ain't. But because he's bought the illusion, and most of science has bought the illusion, then things become impossible. I remember the British government medical advisor, I think her name was Dame Sally Davis or something like that. I think she still is. She came out and said homeopathy was a nonsense, fakery basically, because she has no idea about reality. Like I say, the base form of everything in this reality is waveform information. And what they say about homeopathy is it's impossible to work because the potions are diluted and diluted and diluted until there's none of the original substance left. And because five senses say, can I see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, exactly, it exists or it doesn't exist, the substance is everything. The substance you can see, physical. There's an organization in Germany called the Aerospace Institute in Stuttgart, Germany, which has developed a way of photographing information in water. Fascinating. You can see videos of it on the internet. And what they did was they got this big tank of water and they put a flower in it and then took the flower out and then photographed the droplets of water. And they found information from the flower in every droplet. And one of the things about holographic reality is every part of a hologram is a smaller version of the whole, so it's going to be in every droplet. And then they got people from the local community to come up, and they got another tank of water, and they got little dishes with their names on. And they got each of the people to take 4 droplets from the tank and put it in a dish with their name on. And then they photographed the droplets. What they found was that each 4 droplets were different from the other 4 droplets of everyone else, but the 4 droplets from each person were virtually identical. In other words, just taking a droplet of water and putting it in the dish had impregnated that person's energetic influence upon the water in terms of frequency, vibration, information. So what homeopathy is, when they dilute the substance until there's none of the substance left, what is left in the water is the waveform information of the substance, just like the waveform information of the flower was in the water droplets in the tank after the flower had been taken out. And it's the waveform of that substance which interacts with the waveform field of the body, and if it's done properly, can balance it out and bring about what we call harmony, the opposite of dis-ease, the opposite of illness. But because you see this chief medical officer who is making decisions about what people should have and vaccines and all this stuff, is absolutely clueless about the nature of reality itself, and thus waves away homeopathy on the basis that she doesn't understand how it operates, and therefore how it can work. And you find this with mainstream science everywhere. If they can't explain it, it can't be happening.
Right.
But when you look at complementary ways of treating the body, they're invariably waveform level treaters. Because if the waveform information field is in a balanced, harmonious state, then that which is decoded from it, which is just a reflection of that, the holographic reality we decode this waveform world into, must also be in a balanced, healthy state, because that's no more than that. That's a movie screen of that projector. And so people say about modern medicine and mainstream medicine, they never treat the cause, they always treat the symptom. But how can they treat the cause when the cause is in the waveform level of the body and they don't even accept that exists? All they're left with is treating the symptom, which is the projection of an imbalance in the waveform level in the holographic decoded version of reality. And so what humanity has been manipulated to do is look at the world, see how it would like to change it, but running around just the same as standing on the stage in a movie theater and screaming at the screen, demanding that it changes. This is waving your banner in a protest. Screaming at the screen, demanding the movie changes. Never going to change. It's hit the screen, it's a done deal. If you want to change the movie, you've got to change where the movie's coming from. Then you can change the movie. So what people have been manipulated into is even trying to change what they would like to change, but doing it in a way that it's impossible. You can't change a movie when it hits the screen. And therefore it's what manifests the movie that we need to change. And that comes down in the human experience to perception, which becomes the feedback loop, which becomes the movie screen.
Right. And I know you want to spend the next few years really going into that perception level.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about that. I just want to get your thoughts on Trump, the Trump phenomenon, and what you can tell about the rest of the world by looking at their reaction to Trump.
Well, Trump is the equivalent of a Hollywood actor on the movie screen. And the anti-Trumps people are other actors in the movie. And so humanities, those people who get caught in it, he's the baddie, he is. He's the baddie in this movie, that Trump, he's the baddie. Oh no, he's the goodie, he is the person I like, right? It's a movie. And while we are focusing on this, again, this minutiae of Trump, anti-Trump, left, right, and all this nonsense that we get caught into, Silicon Valley's doing what it is doing in terms of destroying freedom of information and driving on behalf of things like DARPA, the technological development arm of the Pentagon, this AI transhumanist agenda. It's a diversion. And you know, just a quick one, I talk about this hidden hand. These here today, gone tomorrow politicians are just that. Here today, gone tomorrow. What we need to look at is that which is always there, because that's where the power is. That's what pushes this agenda on, no matter who's in power, who's the president, what party, whatever. A quick example. In September 2000, an organization in America called the Project for the New American Century published a document calling for the American government to, quote, fight and decisively win multiple theater wars, to bring about a series of regime changes. And it named the countries that they wanted to regime change: Iraq, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, North Korea, China. The people who published that document included Donald Rumsfeld, who a few months later would be Secretary of State for Defense in the Bush administration, Paul Wolfowitz, who would be his deputy at the Pentagon, Dick Cheney, who would be de facto president under Bush for 2 terms, Dov Zakheim, who would control the entirety of the Pentagon budget in that same period. In that document in September 2000, they said that this process of transformation, all these regime changes, would necessarily be slow, this is the quote, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. 1 year to the month after that document was published, 9 months after the people that wrote it came to power in the Bush administration, the United States had, in September 2001, what Bush called at the time the Pearl Harbor of the 21st century. As a result of that, this process of regime change was triggered by the so-called war on terror justified by 9/11, which the official story of 9/11 is tragically laughable when you break it down and you see how the contradictions. Anyway, this is where I'm going in terms of the politicians and Trump. First man in, of course, officially, George W. Bush. They went into Afghanistan. Then, with Tony Blair lying about weapons of mass destruction, they went into Iraq. And the reason they lied about weapons of mass destruction is because Iraq was on this list of regime change. They didn't have an excuse, so they made one up. And by the way, let us not forget, people now, including even the mainstream media, accept that they were lied to over weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which led to a catastrophic invasion and the catastrophe that has followed. Let us not forget that the very same people, not the same agencies, the same governments, the same personalities that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when they knew they weren't, were the same people that gave us the official story of 9/11. Okay, so the list, Iraq. Then they go into Libya, also on the list. But now Bush is gone, Blair's gone. Now it's Barack Obama. He's a Democrat, not a Republican. And it's David Cameron. He's a conservative, not the illusory of Labour, Blair. But now they're going into another one on the list, and then into Syria. And again, creating mayhem and catastrophe. I mean, you know, Libya is one of the great world's basket cases now, when it was the highest per capita income country in Africa before they sent the boys in. And so that was Obama, and that was Cameron. Then we come to Trump. And Trump is now, yes, he's supposed to be a Republican, but he's the anti-establishment man. He's a maverick. A maverick who was going to drain the swamp and handed the American economy to Goldman Sachs from day one or before day one. But who is he demonizing now? He's demonizing Iran, and he's demonizing North Korea, other people on the list, other countries on the list. So this list from September 2000 has been ticked off all the way through these different politicians and different parties and different personalities. So no matter who's coming and going or who you're going to vote for, you know, it's like some Americans say, you know, it don't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in. Yes, the secret government. Because America is a wonderful example of how it works. So it works the same everywhere. During the Bush administration, and a Republican administration like now, you have this group that control the Republican Party that are acknowledged by the mainstream media. They're called neoconservatives or neocons. They were the people that created the Project for the New American Century, that wrote that document in September 2000. And then in the Democratic Party, you have another group, very much the same, that I call the democons. This is your George Soros's and Zbigniew Brzezinski before he died this year, and others. The key is that if you go one step back in the shadows, the neocons and the democons answer to the same master. So it means that whether
Manchurian
it's
candidate.
one or the other, Republican or Democrat, that is always in power. And that's what's been driving this agenda of ticking these countries off as these people come in. Now, I'll give you another example of how the manipulation works. For me, Trump was selected by these people. He was selected by these people for a number of reasons. One was because he would hand the government over to the corporation billionaires, which he's done, more billionaires in this administration than any other American administration. But also, he was, by his very nature, a polarity that you could play another polarity against, because they want divide and rule. They want civil war in America. They want civil war in Europe as well. But because while we're fighting each other, that can do what the hell it likes, unchallenged. But was one thing about Trump, which I think he was genuine on during the election campaign. He really didn't want conflict with Russia. He did want to come together. I think he was genuine on that. So if you look from the moment he got elected, although there were so many things of benefit to this hidden hand for Trump, there was one thing they didn't want, and that was Russia coming together. They want to hold them apart. They want to keep them in conflict. And so the moment he became elected, we had this Russia hacked the election. Russia this, Russia that, Russia the other. I burnt the toast. It's the Russians. And what it has done is prevent him from getting closer to Russia. Because if he tried to, they'd say, hey, controlled by the Russians, so he's got to stay away from it. And therefore, they're holding the two apart.
Is that what the election scandal's about? To make sure he doesn't get closer to the Russians?
Yeah, this is what it's all about.
So more hate, more anxiety, just keep that division going on.
Yeah,